Welcome to Nevermore Stories. Please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. You'll be surprised how this one ends. Sarah picked up her phone when she heard a text notification. It was her husband Michael, who was getting home late from work. Yet again, Sarah sighed, expecting the usual request for dinner to be ready when he got back. Instead, the text said, "Last-minute happy hour with some co-workers. Come join me." Sarah felt a rush of excitement. She didn't get out much since they had 2 children at home. She quickly changed into something more appropriate and lower cut than she wore, shuttling the kids to soccer practice. Having been married to Michael for so long, she knew precisely how to light a fire in him. When Sarah arrived at the bar, she was surprised by how warmly Michael's co-workers greeted her. They made sure to make room for her at their table and offered her drinks. Sarah forced a smile as she chatted with Michael's co-workers, trying to ignore the nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach. But then she saw him across the room. Jack, her old college flame. Her heart raced as memories flooded back, reminding her of the passion and pain they once shared. She quickly looked away, hoping he wouldn't recognize her, but his piercing gaze was already fixed on her. Before she could react, he made his way over with confident strides and greeted her with a familiar smile. As they caught up on each other's lives, Sarah couldn't shake off the intense chemistry between them. And just when she thought she had regained control, Jack asked about Michael. Her mind went blank as she struggled to form a coherent answer, feeling exposed and vulnerable under his penetrating gaze. Sarah's heart raced as she tried to come up with a response to Jack's question. She knew she couldn't tell him the truth, that she was married to Michael and had 2 children waiting for her at home. But she couldn't bring herself to lie either. "I'm married," Sarah finally managed to say, feeling a pang of guilt as she watched the disappointment flicker across Jack's face. "I see," Jack said, his gaze falling to his drink. "Well, it's good to see you again, Sarah." As Jack walked away, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of regret wash over her. What if she had made a different choice all those years ago? What if she hadn't settled for Michael and instead pursued her passion with Jack? These thoughts consumed her as she finished her drink and said her goodbyes to Michael's co-workers. As she stepped out into the brisk night air, Sarah knew she had to get home to her family. But just as she was about to hail a cab, a hand reached out and grabbed her arm. It was Jack, his eyes intense with emotion. "Sarah, I know this may sound crazy, but I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice low and husky. "I know you're married, but I can't shake off the feeling that there's still something between us, something that we never got to explore." Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she looked into Jack's eyes, remembering all the passion they had shared in college. She knew it was wrong to even consider it, but the temptation was too strong. "I can't, Jack," Sarah said, pulling away from him. "I have a family. I can't just throw everything away for a chance with you." "I understand," Jack said, his face falling. "But if you ever change your mind, you know where to find me." As Jack walked away, Sarah watched him go with a mix of longing and sadness. She knew deep down that she would never act on her desire for him, but the feeling lingered nonetheless. Over the next few days, Sarah found herself unable to focus on anything else but Jack. The memories of their college years flooded back to her, and she couldn't shake off the feeling that she had made a mistake by choosing Michael over him. One day, as she was picking up her kids from school, she saw Jack standing at the edge of the playground watching the children play. She felt her heart skip a beat at the sight of him, and before she could stop herself, she found herself walking towards him. "Jack, what are you doing here?" Sarah asked, her voice soft and hesitant. "I wanted to see you," Jack said, his eyes searching hers. "I know I shouldn't be here, but I just had to talk to you." Sarah felt a wave of emotions wash over her as she looked at Jack. She knew that she should turn around and walk away, but she couldn't resist the pull towards him. "Let's go somewhere private," Sarah said, her mind made up. "I need to talk to you." Jack nodded, his eyes shining with hope as he followed her to her car. As soon as they got inside, Sarah leaned over and kissed him deeply, her body shaking with the intensity of her desire. Jack responded eagerly, his hands moving over her body as he pulled her towards him. With every touch and kiss, Sarah felt like she was on fire. Time seemed to stand still as they abandoned themselves to their passion, exploring each other in ways that made them tremble with desire. But as the sun began to set and parents started to collect their children from soccer practice, reality came crashing back. The thought of leaving Jack and returning to her mundane life tore at her heart, but the way he held her close and whispered promises of love only made it harder for her to walk away. She struggled against the weight of guilt, focusing instead on the present moment, on how his fingers traced molten paths down her overheated skin, on how his lips devoured hers with a ferocity that left her breathless. But as they parted ways, Sarah felt a sense of unease settle in her stomach. She knew that what had happened between them was wrong, but she couldn't deny the fact that she wanted more. Over the next few days, Sarah found herself constantly thinking about Jack, her mind wandering to the moments they had shared together. She knew that what they had done was reckless and dangerous, but the thrill of it had been too great to deny. She knew that she had to make a decision about what to do next, but she also knew that it would be one of the hardest decisions that she would ever have to make. In the end, she decided to take a risk and arranged for them to meet in secret. She knew that it was wrong, but her heart felt alive with the thought of seeing Jack again, and she was willing to take that chance. Every week they would meet in a secluded spot near the lake, hidden away from prying eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough for them to be together and explore their feelings without fear of judgment or repercussions. Every moment they spent together was a delicate dance on the edge of danger. The constant sneaking and fear of getting caught only amplified the intensity of their connection. Despite the risks, every time Sarah saw him, her heart was filled with an unstoppable joy and a sense of liberation that she had never experienced before. Sarah's world comes crashing down when Jack's wife calls, her voice dripping with venom and rage. Sarah's heart races as she listens to every word, feeling the weight of guilt and betrayal settle on her shoulders. She struggles to find an excuse, a justification for her actions, but all she can offer is a weak apology as she realizes the devastating consequences of her affair. Two families torn apart in one fell swoop. Sarah's stomach dropped as she realized that her secret was out. She knew that there was no way to avoid the confrontation, and so she agreed to meet Jack's wife at a park nearby. When Sarah arrived, she saw Jack's wife standing in the middle of the park looking around for her. When their eyes locked, Sarah could see the rage and hurt in her gaze. Without saying a word, Sarah walked towards her, hoping to explain and make things right. But before she could utter a single syllable, Jack's wife lunged forward and grabbed Sarah by the collar. Startled by the sudden attack, Sarah stumbled backwards and hit her head. The last thing Sarah remembered before she blacked out was the look of confusion and betrayal in Jack's wife's eyes. Sarah jolts awake to the blaring sound of machines and the sharp sting of an IV in her arm. Panic sets in as her foggy mind slowly clears, memories of the horrific events flooding back. How did everything spiral out of control so quickly? Her head feels like it's being torn apart, her whole world collapsing around her. How will she ever face Michael after this? The machines beep relentlessly, a constant reminder of her fragile state. She stares blankly at the bleak white ceiling, racking her brain for a way out of this situation. The sound of shuffling feet and beeping machines fills the room as doctors and nurses move about their routine check-ins. But suddenly her attention snaps to a man entering with a sense of purpose. He asks for her name and she confirms it, only to have him hand her divorce papers without a trace of emotion on his face. Her heart drops like a lead weight as she reads through the cruel words that will forever change her life. The reality of the situation hits her like a truck, and she lets out a low sob that echoes through the otherwise silent room. She had hoped that by coming clean about her infidelity, she could save their marriage. But instead, it appears that she has caused irreparable damage and pushed him to take this drastic step in response. She slowly tears the papers in half and throws them aside, then closes her eyes as the tears start streaming down her face. Her world was crumbling around her, but no matter how hard she tried, Sarah couldn't find a way out. The only thing she could do was lay there and cry, her broken heart aching with the realization that her love for Michael would no longer be enough to save their relationship. With shaking hands, Sarah wrote a letter. She poured her heart out, explaining her fears and mistakes, begging for forgiveness and another chance with their love. She put all her energy into it, then folded and tucked it away before leaving the hospital. On the way home, she started to panic, wondering what she would say if Michael answered the door. She saw him in the distance, shoveling gravel around the driveway. Her stomach lurched as she parked her car, then walked towards him. His back was turned as she approached, so she cleared her throat to get his attention. He turned around and his eyes met hers. A cold, hardened expression washed over his face as he registered her presence. "I just wanted to write a letter," she stammered. "I'm sorry for what I did with Jack. Please forgive me." Michael's expression softened as he saw the letter in her hand. Sarah took a deep breath and began reading her apology, tears welling in her eyes. She ended with a plea for forgiveness and carefully folded the letter back up. Michael watched silently. Sarah was just about to turn away when Michael gently grabbed her by the arm and pulled her towards him. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as his lips pressed against hers, her fears melting away as a sense of warmth and security washed over her. Before she could wrap her arms around him, he let go. He slowly retreats, his eyes burning with a mix of pain and anger. That's the feeling you took for granted, he spits out. And now it's gone. His voice trembles as he continues. I never want to feel your touch again or see your face. With that, he turns and walks away, leaving behind shattered pieces of a once cherished relationship. Sarah was consumed by a relentless storm of guilt and despair, the weight of her choices crushing her soul. With each passing day, her heart grew heavier as she watched Michael and their children happily living in their family home, while she was exiled to a bleak apartment across town. Every time she drove by, the sight of her former life taunted her like a cruel reminder of what she had lost. The constant ache in her chest became unbearable as regret consumed her every thought. Desperate to break free from these feelings of guilt and regret, Sarah decided to take action. She slips into the dress he would always compliment her on, the fabric clinging to her curves like a second skin. She expertly applies makeup, making her eyes smolder with intensity and her lips a deep, alluring red. Every brushstroke is deliberate, as if she's preparing for battle. With a deep breath, she left the house and drove straight to Michael's work happy hour. The bar was filled with laughter and conversation as people mingled over drinks. Adrenaline coursed through Sarah as she spotted Michael at the far end of the room. She made eye contact with him and felt a sudden burst of warmth in her chest as his gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than usual before turning away. Taking this as an invitation, Sarah glided towards him with purposeful steps as if she was walking in slow motion. She proceeded to seduce him with more passion and desire than she ever had for Jack. Talking close enough for their lips almost touch, letting him smell her perfume, teasing him with hints of what she longed to do with him. They both knew exactly what was being offered that night. A wicked grin spreads across Michael's face as he raises the scotch to his lips, downing it in one gulp. He turns to Sarah and spits out with contempt, I wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole. Her heart shatters at the unexpected cruelty of his words, and she watches helplessly as he saunters out, leaving her alone with her shattered self-esteem.